Hello, and welcome to another episode of Dr. Mercola's Cellular Wisdom, where we unravel the secrets of good health from the inside out. I'm Ethan Foster, typically here to offer the driest observations in podcast history.
And I'm Alara Sky, perpetually on a mission to prove that comedic brilliance pairs nicely with a deep dive into health. In other words, I might make you laugh, but I'll also make you think.
That's exactly why we keep you around. Today we're talking about a topic that's more connected than it might sound. Atopic dermatitis, better known as eczema, and hyperparathyroidism. I know, it sounds like we're combining words from a medical spelling bee.
Picture this. You hear eczema and think, oh, just dry, itchy skin. But behind the itchy skin is a tangle of immune system triggers and possible bone issues. Because apparently, your skin and your parathyroid glands like to chat behind your back.
Or they're texting each other at midnight when you're too tired to realize what's happening. Let's start with the eczema side. People who deal with atopic dermatitis don't just get the occasional rash. It can involve red flaky patches that sometimes bleed. It's like your skin is auditioning for a dramatic role in a medical drama.
Right, because a simple cameo wouldn't do. Eczema is quite the showboat. Unpredictable triggers, persistent itch, and the nerve to disrupt your sleep. It's like living with a moody roommate that thrives on you wearing the wrong sweater or forgetting to de-stress after a busy day.
And plenty of people have to share their homes with this moody roommate. Atopic dermatitis is one of the most common skin issues worldwide. Babies, children, adults, it doesn't discriminate. The search for triggers can feel like detective work, because stress might set it off, or that all-natural soap you were so proud of purchasing. Then you realize it's more all-chemical than you hoped.
Meanwhile, you're walking around with unrelenting itchiness, trying to function like a normal human being. The errands won't run themselves, so you're out there, bravely itching your way through a grocery store. That's life with eczema. Now, let's pivot to hyperparathyroidism, which doesn't seem related, but the numbers say otherwise.
Hyperparathyroidism is basically an overproduction of parathyroid hormone, or PTH. The parathyroids are 4 tiny glands in your neck that keep track of your calcium and phosphorus levels. Think of them as the cool bouncers at the calcium club. When they work properly, it's all about letting in the right balance of calcium and phosphorus. But with hyperparathyroidism, those bouncers get a bit overzealous, letting too much calcium into your bloodstream.
As every bone in your body might scream, this is too much calcium to handle. Meanwhile, your kidneys also raise an eyebrow, because now they have to strain out the extra calcium. You could end up with kidney stones, bone pain, fatigue, that general feeling that something is off.
A bit like a party that never ends. Fun in theory, but in practice, you're exhausted, dehydrated, and longing for peace. What's interesting is that research hints people with atopic dermatitis have higher odds of encountering hyperparathyroidism, and vitamin D isn't necessarily to blame. That came as a surprise to me.
Surprised me too. Many folks suspect vitamin D is some kind of universal hero or villain in these scenarios, but a study in the archives of dermatological research pored over data from the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey. They saw a higher likelihood of hyperparathyroidism in people with eczema, and it didn't seem to depend on vitamin D levels.
Right, so the usual explanation of maybe they're just lacking vitamin D, so PTH shoots up, wasn't the prime culprit. It's like hearing there was a major plot twist in a detective show. Everyone thought they'd pin the suspect on vitamin D, but then the detective says, nope, the real story's more complicated.
Always is. And the twist gets more interesting when you realize it's especially noticeable in people over 60. If you're older and have eczema, your risk of hyperparathyroidism looks even stronger, especially with normal vitamin D. That suggests other factors might be at play, maybe age-related changes in hormone regulation or immune function, or maybe it's just the universe being mischievous.
The universe does love a good joke. It even makes the names confusing. Hyperparathyroidism versus hyperthyroidism. Sounds like a close cousin, but they're different. Hyperthyroidism deals with an overactive thyroid gland, ramping up your metabolism. Hyperparathyroidism deals with too much parathyroid hormone, messing around with calcium levels. And those parathyroids and thyroid may share neighborhood space in the neck, but they do different jobs.
Exactly. If your thyroid is like your body's energy manager, your parathyroid glands are more like the managers of your bone and mineral health. So, yes, both sets of glands have an address in your neck, but that's about it for the resemblance.
Let's circle back to vitamin D. It's still a big player in many bodily processes, including immune function and how your skin cells grow and develop. So, it might still have some relationship to eczema. But the direct link between vitamin D deficiency and hyperparathyroidism wasn't the main finding here.
It's a curious situation. Lots of folks with eczema do have lower vitamin D, and we know vitamin D influences the immune system, helps control how quickly skin cells multiply, and might reduce inflammation. But then you see studies showing conflicting results. Some show giving kids vitamin D helps with eczema, others say it doesn't. Then some kids who took more vitamin D had worse eczema. It's a real roller coaster.
That's health research in a nutshell. We pin our hopes on one shining star. only to find out it's part of a complex galaxy. Now, let's talk about the big troublemaker behind many chronic issues: poor mitochondrial function plus diet and toxins.
You'd be shocked how many of us have mitochondria that are basically on coffee breaks all day. When your mitochondria aren't producing enough energy, your cells can't function right. That goes for skin cells, gut cells, everything. Next thing you know, your gut's microbiome is thrown into chaos, leaky gut happens, and your immune system starts freaking out over harmless substances.
So, you're telling me those adorable seed oils I use to cook my eggs might not be so adorable after all?
Exactly. Foods high in linoleic acid, La, can destroy mitochondrial function. Processed foods, seed oils like canola or soybean, and even nuts and seeds can load you up with too much La. People often assume these oils are healthy because they're not animal fats, but ironically, La can poison your mitochondria. Less cellular energy means your gut microbiome is more likely to go haywire.
It's almost comedic, but in a tragic way. You try so hard to eat healthier, but if you're downing excess seed oils, you could be fueling the exact imbalance that aggravates eczema or other issues. Meanwhile, the solution might be to ditch the processed stuff, reduce seed oils, and let your cells breathe again.
Precisely. And it's not just La. We're also swimming in endocrine disruptors, synthetic chemicals, and even electromagnetic fields. They're all piling on, making it harder for your cells to generate energy. Without enough energy, your immune system can't do its job properly, and conditions like eczema can flare.
There's so much talk about EMFs these days. Our devices zap us all day long, and we carry them around like they're precious treasures. So it's no surprise that these subtle stressors can add up.
Which then leads us to the lovely realm of stress. Not just physical stress, but emotional stress. Our friend eczema loves stress, anxiety, tension, overthinking. These can rev up your immune system in all the wrong ways. If you're on the verge of a flare, stress can push you right over the edge.
Another reason we should all take up yoga, or at the very least, find a hobby that doesn't revolve around checking work emails at 2 a.m. The calmer we are, the better our body can handle these immune triggers.
Exactly. It's about giving your immune system a break so it doesn't release the hounds at the slightest provocation. And if you're dealing with eczema, one approach people find helpful is phototherapy. Basically controlled exposure to certain types of light. Or, in simpler terms, go enjoy a bit of natural sunlight. Just not so much that you turn into a lobster. But the right amount of sun can dial down inflammation and help the skin.
Living proof that not all therapies come in a bottle. Now, for a quick rundown on the practical side, if someone's wrestling with eczema, they might want to cut out processed foods, especially those loaded with seed oils. That helps reduce linoleic acid. They should also watch out for plastics, weird chemicals in the environment, maybe even limit the EMF exposure, and find ways to keep stress in check.
It's a tall order, but each small step can make a difference. Think of it like chipping away at a stone sculpture. You don't see the final form right away, but each chip moves you closer to a balanced system.
I like that analogy. Meanwhile, the new puzzle piece is that people with eczema might have to keep an eye on their parathyroid hormone levels, especially as they get older. Hyperparathyroidism can creep up with vague symptoms like fatigue or achiness, but it can lead to bigger problems if left unmanaged.
Yep, bone issues, kidney stones, all that fun stuff. And if you do have a parathyroid problem, the solution might involve addressing an underlying benign growth on the glands or dealing with some other factor. But that's between you and a healthcare professional. The big takeaway, if you have eczema, you shouldn't assume it's just a skin issue. It can have a ripple effect.
One that leads to a conversation about vitamin D, which might not even be the culprit. The older crowd might be especially vulnerable. It's a bit like traveling. Sometimes you discover that a flight delay in one city causes you to miss a connection 3 states over. Everything's intertwined.
Exactly. And even though vitamin D is crucial for many reasons, from immune function to bone health, in this particular scenario, the research suggests there's another dynamic at play. We can't just blame the sunshine vitamin for everything.
If only it were that simple. But no, we have to dig deeper into things like mitochondrial energy production, gut health, and the stress we collect from our daily routines. Fun times for investigative types, challenging times for the rest of us.
But the good news is that healthy living can be surprisingly straightforward when you take baby steps. Less junk, more real food, more movement, more time in the sun, better stress management, and an intentional effort to avoid a tsunami of toxins.
Right? Maybe hold off on that third handful of almonds if your LA intake is already high, and skip the daily French fries cooked in seed oils. Don't invite the troublemaker to your dinner table, in other words.
And by troublemaker, we mean those cunning molecules that love to sabotage your mitochondria. The mitochondria might be small, but they're the reason your cells can do their job. You don't want to irritate them. They're basically your phone battery for everything that keeps you alive and functioning.
So, with that bigger picture in mind, how do we wrap this up for the audience?
I'd say, consider your skin as an outward sign of something deeper. Eczema might be the fire alarm, letting you know there's smoke somewhere in your system, whether it's stress, toxins, poor diet, or an overworked endocrine system. And the research linking eczema to hyperparathyroidism just underscores that your body's systems all talk to each other.
Which means it's wise to pay attention. The next time you're tempted to dismiss that persistent itch as just dry skin, remember it might be connected to an entirely different conversation happening in your glands.
Right. And if you're older or you suspect something's up with your calcium levels, get it checked out. Don't assume I'm just tired because I'm aging. That's how we miss the clues that our parathyroid thermostat might be stuck in overdrive.
Because let's face it, we're all aging. Some of us are just more graceful about it. And by graceful, I mean we keep comedic commentary rolling no matter what.
Clearly, you're the picture of grace. But comedic commentary aside, investing in the fundamentals of health, stress reduction, real food, sunlight, staying informed, goes a long way in managing skin conditions like eczema, and possibly in warding off complications like hyperparathyroidism.
So, the moral of this story is, your skin is never just skin deep. Your glands are more interesting than you thought. And vitamin D has a complicated social life. It may show up everywhere, but it's not necessarily the troublemaker in this specific drama.
That's a neat summary, Ethan. Now, before we sign off, let's give our audience a final nudge to stay curious. The way our hormones, immune system, and nutrients interact is one complex puzzle. You might never solve it completely, but each piece you learn makes the big picture clearer.
And hopefully, we've added a piece or two today. Thank you all for joining us on Dr. Mercola's Cellular Wisdom. We appreciate you lending us your ears, and possibly your parathyroids.
Yes, we promise to return those parathyroids in pristine condition. Until next time, I'm Alara Sky, reminding you that behind every itch is a story about mitochondria, hormones, and quite possibly too many seed oils.
And I'm Ethan Foster, reminding you that good health is part science, part detective work, and part comedic timing. Thanks for listening. Stay well, stay curious, and we'll see you next time.